Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. For many of you who have watched us over the years, you know that we are apolitical, and we don't ever want to tell you how to vote or who to vote for, but we do want to make sure that we give you all of the information to make the best decision. Our guest this morning is none other than David Michael Williams. He is a candidate for District 9 Judge, Division F, and we welcome him to the OPT Network for the very first time. David, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. I've been a fan for a long time, so I felt like I met a superstar when I walked in here.
You are kind. Now, not only are you a candidate for District 9 Judge, you are also current city attorney for Alexandria.
That's correct.
Working as the executive counsel for the mayor.
That's right.
So take us back to when you decided that, first of all, you wanted to be an attorney.
Okay. So actually, I never wanted to be an attorney. I always wanted to be a judge, but believe it or not. And it was heartbreaking when I found out you had to be an attorney to be a judge. Funny stories. My first day in law school, one of my professors, Professor Jackie Nash, who was an ad hoc judge in Baton Rouge, she was going around, and if you know anything about law school, especially at Southern University, the Southern University Law Center.
I'm a Southern University graduate.
Okay, cool. So we got that in common.
That's it. We are Jaguars.
Yes, indeed. So if you know anything about the Law Center, then it's a pledging process. And you thinking, I'm paying these folks this money, and they trying to kick me out of class. But what they're trying to do is weed out the folks who are just there because mom and daddy want them to be there, the people who really want to contribute to the legal community. So I'm with Professor Jackie Nash, first day of class. She goes around the classes and she asking people why they want to be an attorney. And people said, I want to help people, and they give me these long speeches that they have prepared because they prepare for her class. And Jackie Nash gets to me, she said, why do you want to be an attorney, Mr. Williams? Why are you wasting my time? And I said, Professor Nash, with all due respect, I want to be a judge. And she stopped in her tracks and she said, about 20-something years ago, I had a classmate that sat next to me, and when the professor asked him this question, he said the same exact thing. You probably don't know this guy, though. He's a judge in Alexandria. His name is George McTwire.
Quit it!
No lie. If Professor Jackie Nash, who's an AKA, if she's watching this, she can attest to it. But yes, indeed. So just look how God does that thing.
And so God brings it full circle.
Yes,
so Judge McTwire is actually the judge who's retiring.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when did you know that you wanted to be a judge, and how does that happen?
So when I was in school, when I was a kid, I always thought I was a superhero. I was a kid who got in trouble for fighting for other kids in school. And when you see anything that's unjust or anything that's not right, I have a desire to make sure people are treated correctly and treated fairly. And it's not a speech that I'm giving you. I really have that desire. It hurts my heart when I see the least of us oppressed or not treated right, or when I see the system not being fair, or people not getting their just day, or people not getting the due process that they're afforded. So I have a desire to implement that. It's really like an itch, that I have to scratch, that I want to implement. So it's just a part of what God made me to be and what he put in me.
And so what do your parents say when you start on this journey to law school and you say to them?
They knew it. As many times I argued and thought my disrespectful behind. So they knew that I was going to either be a lawyer or they was going to have some trouble with me. So they knew it. I never want to do anything different.
So tell me about the matriculation through college and then through law school.
So I went to started school at Northwestern State University. I went there on a track scholarship. Thought I was going to play some football.
Track?
Yeah, I was a track.
What did you run?
I was a track stud. Yeah, I ran a long jump, triple jump, 4x1.
Wow.
Yeah, very close to qualifying for the trials.
Blazing speed.
My daughter is actually faster than I was.
Really?
Yeah, matter of fact, she finished number 7th in the country in a long jump last year. She's getting interest from colleges at 11 years old.
At 11 years old, she's being recruited already.
Yeah, they can't call it recruiting, but
of course.
But yeah, that's my baby. So I ran track at Northwestern. I pledged a fraternity. I don't know if you're familiar with Omega Psi Phi. You heard anything about those guys?
Not too much. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
But it's significantly involved in community service and actually helped campaign for the sheriff who just retired. He was the only black sheriff for a while in the state of Louisiana, Victor Jones, while I was at Northwestern. After that, I graduated from Northwestern, went to law school at Southern. And the rest was work and history involved. Yeah.
And so when did you know that you had a servant's heart?
Oh man, I can't tell you when I haven't felt that way, and I don't mean to boast about it. Like, look at me and what I'm doing for people, but it really, I feel complete when I'm serving people. And I was just talking to somebody, and I think I might have posted something on the page. Truly, we were all really built for service. You know, God built us to be servants.
Absolutely.
You know, Jesus was our perfect example. You know, this is a man who thought it not robbery to be equal with God. But when he came on this planet, he washed the disciples' feet. You know, that's how low he made himself.
Right.
And see, that's the kind of spirit that gives me pleasure. I enjoy serving. And you know, and I know that now, because I'm running for office, that, you know, we have to post stuff on Facebook and we have to kind of tell some people who we are and what we do. Most of the time when I'm involved in it, I like to keep it to myself, you know, because that's where the joy is. Yeah.
Right. And that's where the reward is.
That's right. It feels good, though. It really feels good to serve the public. And that's why this position is an ultimate position of public service. That's what people need to understand about this position of a judge. It's really an invisible position. It's not a position where you stand up high and say, look how powerful I am. Your job is to make sure that the evidence is collected and distributed and admitted into the court fairly and justly and legally, to make sure that both sides are competent and that they're doing their job and presenting their case, and that everybody receives equality and justice and fairness. That's your job. So you really serving the public to make sure that those precepts are going forth and there's no impediments in the judicial process. You're a servant. It's not about how important you are, how great you are. Your job is to make sure it's done right. You are the referee on the basketball court.
Sure.
That's what you do. You know, you're not the star player. So it's not a, you know, I've been blessed in my practice. I've got a lot of miles on me in my practice. I've tried so many jury trials. I've been involved in so many litigation. I had a lawyer joke with me the other day, an older guy said, man, I can't believe you tried so many criminal cases and so many civil cases. I've been practicing for 40 years and I hadn't had the opportunity to try so many cases. How did you do it? And I, you know, glory to God, I've never any credit I take for myself. But I've been blessed to see the apex of criminal litigation, of civil litigation. And I know how important that experience is. So,
And so when we talk about this job, District 9 Judge, Division F.
Yes, ma'am.
And Judge McTwire has served in that position for probably 3 decades.
Right.
So tell us exactly what this judgeship is responsible for in Division F.
So the divisions in Rapides Parish are different. So, of course, 9th Judicial District Judge, the 9th Judicial District is just the parish that it encompasses. And,
Okay.
Each parish, or some small parishes have clusters of parishes that are within a judicial district. The Division F is just a division of the district. In other words, that's specifically for that judge and that docket, the cases that are allotted to that judge. So this judge might be on the civil bench at this time hearing civil cases. Then he may be on the juvenile bench hearing juvenile cases. Then he may be on the criminal bench. It rotates periodically. So you could be responsible for, Judge McTwire is currently hearing civil cases, which are personal injury, economic injury, child support, child custody, divorce, matters of that nature that don't involve a criminal nature. That's what he's currently hearing. But he's presided over criminal matters in certain portions of time, all kind of different cases. I don't think he's ever been in the juvenile, he's ever been the juvenile judge, but it rotates.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we'll have more information about not only what Attorney David Michael Williams is doing, but what he hopes to do. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Attorney David Michael Williams. He is a candidate for District 9 Judge, Division F. And we're talking about what we all need to understand. David, we're always talking about voter registration,
Right.
but not so much about voter information.
Right.
And so our son is voting in his first election, his
Right.
first presidential election. And so we've been having conversations at the dinner table and at home about understanding what candidates do.
Excellent.
And why we should vote for the candidates that we vote for.
Excellent.
Now, you talked about the presiding, what the judge presides over.
Right.
But for somebody who is looking at you and looking at this race, what information do we need to make the best decision?
That is a wonderful point. And first of all, I'm just impressed that y'all having conversations at the dinner table, because families don't do that anymore. So that's amazing. The first thing that I would say in response to that is you're exactly right. I think that everybody talks about voters registration. That's a big thing, getting everybody registered to vote. But they don't say anything about voters education.
Right.
People have no idea what the people that they're voting for actually do. I mean, we've talked to people and we've had to explain to them where their city council, what district they encompass, and the administrative functions versus the legislative function versus the executive function. The way that these work together is really important.
So break that down for us, for the young voter and even the old voter that really doesn't understand. Because see, right now we're focused on the presidential election and not so much the down ballot elections that really are going to affect us just as much, if not more.
Right, so you've got your executive function, which would be like your mayor, your president. Your legislative would be like your police jury, your city council. And then you have your judicial branch. These are your judges, and that's kind of the realm of where we are and what I'm running for. And they are supposed to be separate and apart. They're supposed to be unbiased. You cannot be attached. There are separate sets of rules for judges that campaign. There's certain things you can't do. You can't publicly promote another candidate for office because you have to be set apart, because this person or this group might come in front of you and you have to be fair and impartial. So those are excellent questions. Let me talk a little bit about the office of judge and this district judge position.
Okay.
All right, so we've talked about the 9th Judicial District being the parish of Rapides. That's what it encompasses. This position, even though it's only a sub-district, a carved out district in the parish that votes for this judge would preside over the entire parish. So George McTwire, who's the current sitting judge who's going to retire soon, he presides over the entire parish of Rapides Parish. So if anything happened in the parish, if it's assigned to him, he can have cases, even though Pineville don't vote for him, he can have cases from a couple from Pineville with child support and child custody. He can have a criminal case from Poland or from Cheneyville or from Glenmore or anywhere within the parish of Rapides Parish. And he would preside over that case. Yes, ma'am.
And so what do you think in your years of practice prepares you for this position?
Starting from the beginning, you know, a lot of people, they get the opportunity to kind of baby step into their practice. I was thrown in hot grease. I started my practice in LaSalle, Louisiana, which is GINA, and this was right after GINA 6. And I started with pro bono and a criminal defense and public defense practice. What that allowed me to do is, first of all, no lawyers were coming up there after GINA 6. That allowed me to represent a bunch of people, black, white, hurting, people with money, people who didn't have the luxuries that you and I have or we've been blessed with. The entire gambit of people. And I was forced to have to try cases at an early age in my profession. And that experience is what qualified me more than anything, as far as legally. What happens is at the apex of any litigation, anything that you do in the law, in the realm of law, the trial is the apex. That's the top of it.
Right.
You have to do everything in litigation to get to that point. And the fact that I've been blessed to be involved in so many jury trials and so many cases, then I know evidence law. I've been blessed to understand the laws of evidence, what can be admitted into court. I know the constitutional provisions in criminal cases, the Fourth Amendment, laws against illegal searches and seizures. I understand the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and how that actually equate. See, we all know our constitutional rights, but we don't know how they apply and how they equate and how they actually fit into the realm of the judicial process. You know, for example, you know, everybody loves the Fourth Amendment, but they don't understand that your car cannot be searched unless a police officer has probable cause, and the officer knows that. That's how your Fourth Amendment hits the streets. And if that constitutional amendment is violated, whatever that officer or whatever that governmental entity find can be thrown out of court. It cannot be admitted into court.
But on the same token, isn't probable cause very subjective to the police officer?
That's a very good question. Now we're having a good count. It is very subjective. However, there are cases and case law in place that say if you don't do this, if you don't see this, then this does not equate to probable cause. So exactly right. Yeah.
And so with all of the deaths of African American men and all of the protesting that we are seeing around the country and even in central Louisiana, how do you think as a judge that will affect the way, if you're elected, that you enforce the law?
We need people in these positions with perspective. To give you a perfect example, I've got a friend of mine, and he's not homeless. You know, he suffers from some things, but he's a great guy, awesome guy, and he's really aggressive. And if you didn't know him, and he ran at you in the street, you would be offended. You would even be scared. You would think that he's going to attack you. But I know him. I know what he's doing. You know, and we talk. We eat together. We hang out. Because I know him, I have a perspective in his lifestyle. Because I'm from where he's from, I know his family, and I'm connected to his community.
Right.
So I'm going to have a different perspective. I'm not going to be offended if he's loud. You know, I'm going to give him credence and I'm going to give him respect because I know he's different.
Right.
And see, that's what we need in our judicial system, perspective. I've been blessed to mentor so many young black men, and I can tell you there are opportunities that are different than some of their counterparts. That's different, and when you have that perspective, and when you can see and you have an eye and you know that they might not have the same resources you have. You know, we can put it in them as much as we want to, and they go home to the same environment. They don't have those resources. And when you take that into understanding, that helps you make an informed decision that's good for the community.
Right.
Because think about it, at the end of the day, we want hardworking citizens. When people are working and they're taking care of business, then they're not committing crimes. They're not committing crimes. But how do we do that? How do we put people in a position to optimize their talent? How do we do that? And that takes perspective. It takes one to know one. And I think that's what God has given me. He's allowed me to deal and talk and connect with people from Tennyson Oaks to the Sonia Quarters to Lower Third. It's out in the country. You know, I can't, he's allowed me to be in contact with so many different people with so many different perspectives. And that's the kind of perspective that we need to deal with some of these things because it's going to be different for a while. And you're going to need a voice with reason. You're going to need a voice, somebody that can unite people, not to tear people and separate people. Because at the end of the day, what's the end game? Do we want to stay separate?
Right. We want to come together.
We want to come together, but we have to address some things first. You know, I'm going to tell you about being married taught me more than any law school, period. If I compromise. I learned this: you can be right or you can be happy as a husband. You can't be both, you know. But let me tell you, I've learned how to address issues. My wife, I ain't gonna come in there smiling at her. If we got a problem, she gonna make sure we deal with it and we resolve it and we talk through it. And that's how it is with this. We got to deal with these problems before we come together as a nation. We can't. You have to address them. You can't sweep them under the rug. You can't act like they don't exist because they do exist. And there's some people who just don't know they exist. And that's okay. And you have a job to communicate that to them, not judgingly, but in a loving spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to have more of our conversation with attorney David Michael Williams. And we're going to talk about this election season and more of what you need to know to cast your ballot. Stay on point. We're back after this. Our guest this morning is attorney David Michael Williams, and he is a candidate for District 9, Division F judge. And that encompasses all of Rapides Parish. So, David, a lot of people are asking this question,
right?
Especially people of color. They're saying, why do Black candidates run against each other?
Right.
Help us understand it.
So this actual district is a sub-district. So it's a district that's carved out. Even though the district would represent, or the judge would represent the entire parish, there's a district carved out that usually include most of the minority areas. So generally in these elections, you're gonna have a minority running against a minority. If you remember the last election 6 years ago, when Tiffany ran against Monique Rawls and Clifton Spears, those were all 4 Black candidates. So this is not uncommon for this.
So it's not like you're necessarily running against each other or coming against each other. But tell people why this district was carved out.
And see, the purpose was to make sure that we had Black and African American and minority judges representing our community. The way the district was set up, it was hard for a Black judicial candidate to be elected, but several of the people in our community, over 50%, are African American or minorities. So that was the purpose of carving the district out.
And so you all know each other, you've worked together, you've seen each other in court and in the community. And so when we look at it based on why we have this district carved out, and now we understand why you're running against each other. And I said this to David, they're both good looking, they're both smart.
She's got me beat, I promise you.
You both make us proud in our community. And so what is the difference maker? What puts the thumb on the scale?
It's a very good question. So let me tell you this first. Let me give this disclaimer. Tiffany Sanders is an amazing person. She's a great attorney. I'm the city attorney now. She's actually one of my prosecutors and worked for me, and she does an amazing job. She's been a criminal defense attorney for years. She's done civil work. She's done public defense. So she does a great job. She's a great attorney. What I bring is a sense of real experience. Now, if you know the platform that we're running on, those 3 premises are real experience, real solution, and real justice.
Okay,
real experience. This is what I mean by real experience. In the 12, almost 13 years that I've been practicing law, I've been blessed to try more jury trials than almost anybody in this parish. Maybe Bridget Brown tried more than me, but I've been blessed to try a bunch of cases. If you know anything about any type of litigation, the apex of litigation is the trial. The discovery process, the evidence process, all of that leads up to the trial. And when you see so many of those, then you understand that process. You understand how to rule. You understand the rules of evidence. You understand it from a practical matter. And I've been blessed to get that experience. So when we run on real experience, that's what we mean, real experience.
So real experience in your mind is what sets you apart.
That's exactly right.
So as you're talking to people throughout Rapides Parish and all of the parishes that you've named and all that Rapides encompasses, what are people saying to you about what they want their next judge to be?
They want somebody connected that's going to be fair, somebody they feel like they can touch that's going to be fair. That's what they want. And they want somebody they can talk to and break down at a cellular level. That's what they want. People want people to be real with them. And that's what I want to do. And this isn't in comparison to anybody. This is what I want to do. I want to be available. I want to be accessible. I want to be, not only do I want to be fair and impartial and display judicial temperament and be fair and make good decisions from the bench, but I also want to be in the community and be a pillar in the community. I want young Black men and young Black women to look and say, this is what I aspire to be. This is our judicial system working at its best. The reason why a lot of young Black voters are discouraged because they feel like their vote doesn't matter. They feel like if I vote, it's not going to change it. I'm not going to see anything different. I want to be able to say that I want these young folks and anybody else as well. I want them to be able to say, I voted for Mr. Williams and I see the difference. I see him being fair. I see him implementing alternative solutions to incarceration. I see him making just decisions dealing with child support, with custody and divorce. And there are things that God has blessed me with, their experience that God blessed with me in my own family that allow me to prepare me for those moments, to be able to be just and to be fair.
Let's talk about child support for a minute. Because a lot of people feel like child support in some cases can be unfair. Talk about how you will roll child support out so that it works.
So
if that makes
there,
sense.
actually, the work is kind of already done. There's a formula within our code that calculates child support. It goes off your income and things of that nature. So the work is already done. Most of the work involved in child custody is determining the factors to determine where the child goes or what type of custody is appropriate for the two parents. But yeah, child custody is usually done. Now, usually in child custody, both parents can get together and agree. But most of the time, they stick to that formula.
What about those men that don't have jobs
Right.
and are looking at having to go to jail
Right.
because they're not paying child support? What do we say to those?
Right.
Those
So it's two sides to that. First of all, common sense will tell you if somebody's in jail, they're not going to be able to provide child support. But usually when it gets to that point, then you have a mother that has not been receiving child support for an extended period. So there has to be alternatives to putting a man in jail for child support that still benefit the mother and put her in a good position where she can receive the care and the resources that she needs. So there's a balance there, and you have to just take it on a case-by-case basis. You have to. You have to see it. At the end of the day, it's not about the father and the mother in those situations. It's about what's best for the child to make sure that child is provided for.
And so going forward, do you think that you have the experience necessary, and you've said that you have, to deal with all the vast cases
I do.
that will come through?
So let me tell you this. Not only have I been involved in the litigation aspect, in other words, in actually representing people on both sides, from police officers to people who are mistreated by police officers. I've got the entire gambit. I've been blessed to have the entire gambit, but I have a family. And one thing that I've learned from my wife and from my children, I'll give you a perfect example. One of my first cases, my first free cases, was a DCFS, or a child in need of care case. In those cases, the state will come and they remove your children if there was neglect or any form of abuse. Those cases are extremely hard because you see parents without resources trying to do the best they can, some of them, and they make these mistakes and their children suffer. So in a position of a judge, or you'd have to make a decision that's going to benefit these children, but still understanding that mamas and daddies ain't all like Daddy Warbucks from Annie. They all don't have those resources and money and the stuff that that some of us are blessed with. So taking that in perspective, I can't tell you how it would hurt and crush me for someone to take my child from me, even if I made a mistake. I can't tell you how that would feel. And that's the kind of aspect. That's what I want to bring. That's the kind of experience, that compassion, and that opportunity to relate. But still protecting the child. I've had family members that have had brushes with the law. I know what that feels like. I've been in court supporting those family members. I've had family members who were victimized and been victims of violent crimes. I've been a victim of a violent crime. So I know what it feels like to be able to protect, to have a desire to have your community protected. Those are all aspects that God has given me a perspective. And when I talk about perspective, that's the lens that I want to take when I make these rulings. If I'm blessed to be in this position, when I make these rulings, I want to consider those victims who've been hurt. I want to consider those families. I want to consider the fact that these parents don't have the same resources as these parents right here. Those are things that have to be considered. You can't paint it all with the same brush because it's different.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of perspective that God has blessed me with. And that's what I want to take to the bench and implement for our citizens.
Indeed. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about systemic racism, and I want to talk about David's spiritual walk. Stay on point. We're back after this. Attorney David Michael Williams is our guest this morning. He is a candidate for District 9 Judge Division F, and we're talking about what you need to know about him when you're making the decision this election season. We can't leave this conversation without talking about systemic racism.
Right.
And there are people that still feel like systemic racism is not an issue. How do you feel about that? Where do you stand on that? And with all of that said, how do you meet these cases in a fair and impartial way?
Excellent question. So when I first started practicing law, of course, the first realm that I dove into was criminal defense and civil rights.
Right.
So I'm a civil rights lawyer and a criminal defense lawyer. Before I came to the city, that's what I did. Of course, now that I'm with the city, I'm the chief prosecutor, but that's what I did prior to coming to the city. One thing that we did a lot of in our practice is we called it Fourth Amendment work. In other words, people who were illegally stopped, if their houses were illegally searched, we would file motions called motions to suppress. And one of the arguments the police officers would say when you filed a motion to suppress, and just to kind of give you some background, a motion to suppress said you violated my Fourth Amendment rights when you pulled me over. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights when you searched my house illegally. So whatever you find should be thrown out of court. That's what a Fourth Amendment work is. So I did a bunch of those for a long time. One of the arguments that the officers would make is, no, we had probable cause to do it because this is a high crime area. So what I would do is I would do the study on what's considered a high crime area. And I found that what's considered a high crime area is where the police presence is and where the police officers are pulling more people over. So if they are on 3rd Street pulling people over more at a higher rate, then eventually you're going to find more narcotics. You'll find more contraband, right? If I'm in Tennyson Oaks or Landmark pulling over, you're going to find contraband, believe it or not. Where you have the most police presence, where you pull people over more, agrees with what's a high crime area. That is systemic racism in a nutshell. People don't realize that the systemic racism is just exactly what it is, a system. And a lot of times the players that are in place don't even realize that they're perpetuating that system. There's some good people with good hearts who are perpetuating this system. Now, let me say this first of all. I do believe there are some wonderful police officers because I know them.
Absolutely.
I can give you, I can tell you I can give you a list of all of these great men who put their lives on the line on a regular basis for you and I. But I hate the fact that these bad apples ruin it for the bunch. And it's not a training problem. You hear people say if they were trained properly. Now, there are some techniques you can learn that are non-lethal, that'll help you, de-escalation that will help you. But at the end of the day, it's a heart issue. It's a heart issue.
Is it really, though, at the heart of an issue where you see a man shot 7 times in the back who is moving away from the police officer, not following authority, but it is shot 7 times in the back? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's a heart issue or if that's a fear issue. Are the police afraid of black and brown men? Afraid that I can't contain him, so I do what I think is going to help me return home to my family.
You're speaking the same language. So, in the Bible, love conquers all.
Right.
And one of the things that love conquers is fear. And you're exactly right. It is a level of fear, and I think it's perpetuated. But I think it all comes to the root of who this person is and what they're struggling with. But I agree with you, and that's a very, very interesting point. I'll tell you this, there are some officers that I know who are great officers who are reluctant now because of what's going on, because they don't want to be on the news. They don't want to go viral. Mm-hmm. So there are people who want to perpetuate a good system, who want to treat people correctly, who want to make sure that they're fair. These officers exist. There are some officers with nothing but good intentions. One thing that, I don't care who you are, I don't care how far right you are, how far left you are. One thing we can agree on is that George Floyd did not have to die.
Sure.
And the good thing about, and I hate to say good thing about it, but the best thing that happened to us came from death. When Jesus Christ died for us, we had a right to live. One of the wonderful things that came out of this man's sacrifice is you have people who were so far right or so far on the other spectrum coming together saying, wait a minute, there must be a problem. There is a problem. You had people who fought the system and who disregarded and said that systematic racism is something made up by the left, that are now admitting that there must be a significant problem. The question is, what do you do with these people who have their hearts wide open now? Now, at the end of the day, we won't change. We want people to understand. My wife would tell me that all she want me to do is understand her. I don't have to fix it.
Right.
See, men, what we try to do, and David would tell you, we try to fix it.
Right.
But we can't fix everything. That's God's job. You just want understanding. And when you understand something, your heart is open. That's why I said it's a heart problem. And you have understanding your heart is wide open. Then you're open to change. Then God can work on you. Because you're not going to fix somebody's heart. That's too big.
Right.
I'm not going to fix anybody's heart. I don't care how many robes I got on, how many gavels you give me. I'm not going to fix anybody's heart. But if I can put a perspective in place, when those people come talk to me, who trust me and know I'm not going to ridicule them and point the finger at them and call them racist and things of that nature, who now realize there's something wrong, that's when you have to impart what your message into them in a loving manner, in a loving spirit. That's when they're wide open. That's when you do it. Because at the end of the day, when God changes your heart, when he does that, nobody, Satan himself couldn't pull it from your hands.
And so with that said, we've talked about God and your faith is right out there on the line. Talk about how important your faith has been over these many years of dealing with so many different types of people.
Well, Jesus is my catalyst. He's my catalyst. And let me say you this. Let me go ahead and give you my disclaimer. I'm so scared of God and I'm afraid and I reverence God. I would not play with his name for a political position. This is not what this is. I'm ordained, God ordained me for this mission right here. And I want to be in a position where I'm serving God's people and where his ministry is going forth. Well, you might say, David, wait a minute, we talking about the judicial system and religion, and we shouldn't mix that together. But let me tell you about some of the principles in Christianity. Protect the weak and the oppressed. Love your neighbor like you love yourself. These are the concepts and the lenses that our judicial system should look through. You know, it's not a judgmental phase, but it's being fair and equal. Jesus went to the least. Matter of fact, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were so mad at him because he went to the least. He was eating with the publicans and the sinners. So we have a duty. We have a duty to protect the weak and those who are oppressed. We have a duty to love our neighbors like we love ourselves. The Bible says, how do you know a Christian? His love from one to the other. So that's the lens that I want to incorporate, and that's the ministry that I want to go through. Now, if you got a problem with me loving Jesus, you're just gonna have that problem, because that's what I want to bring to the bench.
I love it. So before you got to go, David, tell people where you're going to be on the ballot and how to get out and vote.
Awesome. Voting is
right there.
Important. Thank you. This is important. So many of us are discouraged when it comes to voting because we feel like our vote doesn't matter. I want to be the guy that if you put me in a position to serve you as your next night judicial district court judge, that you see the difference that you voted for. You see the perspective implemented. You see people being treated fairly. You see the community being protected. So it's important to go out and vote. We won't change. Everybody wants to make a point. Nobody wants to make a change. This vote matters. Your vote matters. On the ballot, I'm number 73 on the ballot. Early voting is October 20th through October 27th. Of course, the normal voting cycle is November 3rd. Early voting, I think, is at the courthouse, and the Rapides Parish Courthouse in Keys Park in Pineville. But I'm encouraging you, as many people as you can, go out and early vote, because you don't know what's going to happen during the normal voting. You don't know how busy, how thick the lines would be. Go early vote, October 20th through the 27th at the courthouse. It's that important. Your vote does matter. I promise you it does.
Attorney David Michael Williams.
Thank you so much
David,
for having me.
thank you so much.
My pleasure.
He is a candidate for District 9 Judge, Division F. Stay on point. We're back right after this.